Box Young. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, sharing, showing your support, tuning into lives, commenting in the comment sections. Subscribers since day one, recent subscribers. I really appreciate each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Renee Box Young. If there are any new listeners, this is a platform where we simply discuss, critique, analyze, and just talk about the sport of boxing. Simple as that. One of the few times I agree with the promoter, which is Eddie Hearn. This is in World Boxing News, if I'm not mistaken, .net, link in the description. I'm doing something different. I'm not going to show you on the screen or anything of that nature. Check out the link in the description. I just want to read it off to you, okay? I have it here, on my tablet. And very interesting news, and I definitely agree with Eddie Hearn on this. This reminds me, before we get into this, of some time ago. It was about approximately 2 years ago. I posted a quick video on it where, and it was in reference to Eddie Hearn, Ludabella, promoter Ludabella, and Bob Arum. They were gathered around, laughing and just joking about how many belts there are out there. And, Eddie Hearn is on the stance that there are too many belts. Here it says in the article, it says boxing promoter Eddie Hearn has questioned what role the World Boxing Council and other historical organizations have to play in the future. So he says the British head of matchroom boxing is seriously considering walking away from the four major sanctioning bodies. So he's thinking about walking. I don't think he's going to do it. He probably will. Who knows, right? Because Eddie Hearn, it's hard to believe him, and just generally promoters, you know what I mean? And people in the boxing business, it's really hard. Businessmen and women or what have you. You already know why, because the sport is corrupt. We've been talking about that recently on my channel. And actually, throughout my channel, I constantly mention that. We know that the sport of boxing is really corrupt. Matter of fact, Jojo Diaz just mentioned on Twitter recently, he's going back and forth with people right now, but, whatever. I even made videos about it, how he's going through some kind of civil stuff, lawsuit, something along those lines, with his manager, suing Golden Boy or what have you, and you can check it out, but he mentioned on Twitter, Jojo Diaz, shouts out to him, that, and I've said it time and time again, that fighters go through a lot of things, it's a lot of pressure, dealing with the business of boxing and things of that nature, and promoters and, businessmen in the sport of boxing, politics, in other words, right? So, it's hard to believe. I don't think Eddie Hearn's going to take that big of a step. It's a really big step if he were to really, but that means that, he would throw away all those belts that Anthony Joshua has right now. So, I mean, I don't think he would do that, but he's right. He's right. Let me continue reading this article. It says, interesting stuff here. It says, delusion that paying out fees left, right, and center for his tons, here it's a typo, it says tens of boxing, tons of boxing shows per year. Hearn is mulling over a revolution of sport of sorts. Okay, so he's trying to make a movement here, you know what I mean? And abandoning or canceling the belts, and the sanctioning bodies altogether, So it says here, he says, this could be the moment. Hearn told the Toe to Toe podcast, quote, I don't like to threaten governing bodies, but at the moment, the people putting the money on the line, the people putting the risk on the line, outside of the people that are putting in real risks, the fighters are promoters, and that's very true. That's very factual. It's the fighters who are the ones that, it seems like they promote themselves more. Recently, we've been seeing, and something I have criticized about, Eddie Hearn and, just other promoters in general, that sometimes they get too much of the camera in their faces, man. I mean, they talk too much. It should be the fighters who should be getting more of the limelight. It should be fighters who should be getting more of that, attention, definitely, because they're the ones that risk their lives in the ring. They're the ones that go in the ring, not the promoters, you know what I mean? So, and it continues to say, Eddie Hearn's continued quoting. He says, we're putting the money up for the shows, we're taking risks, and we're making the losses. It's true, okay? The governing bodies, check this out, ladies and gentlemen, what Eddie Hearn says. I mean, there's truth to this, okay? The governing bodies turn up saying, thank you very much, and take, and take their money. I mean, that's exactly what's going on with these government. Well, in my series, Boxing Then and Now, go check it out. It's a playlist. I leave it constantly at the end of my recent videos, or just check it out in the playlist on my channel. Boxing Then and Now, we talked about sanctioning bodies. We talked about the belts. We talked about, OG, Stormer B-Man, Curtis Anderson, my guy, Reggie Owens, they discussed and talked about, and I asked them, what's the reason? What is the reason of this? What's the purpose of the sanctioned bodies? And they said, money. Money, ladies and gentlemen. I understand fighters fight their way to the top. The belt is, traditionally speaking, I guess we can say, right? historically speaking, there were a lot less belts, and those belts really did mean something at the time. Curtis Anderson broke it down amazingly. Go check it out, man. I'll leave it. I don't remember which one it was, which episode. I think it was 4 or 5. Just find it out. You check it out in my and it's in the descriptions also. Okay, so in the descriptions of my Boxing Then and Now series, each video, um, I describe what it's about. So just look for the one that talks about sanctioned bodies. Okay, and so historically speaking, the belts were less. They really meant something. Now it's just it seems like they're just making belts out of nowhere, divisions out of hand. So many divisions. I understand there are weight classes for a reason, but what's this guy? Suleiman, this Bridgerweight thing. I mean, it's just like and all these belts, franchise, interim, diamond, etc., etc., etc. Regular, super champ. I mean, WBA, etc., etc. Whatever, man. It's just nonsense in my humble opinion. Which is why I don't really talk about belts on I've said it time and time again, ladies and gentlemen. On my channel, I really don't talk about belts. I mean, I understand to a certain extent, it's respectable, and there are fighters who really get them belts for a reason. I've said it time and time again, ladies and gentlemen. The hard way, the hard way. There are fighters out there that really have gotten those belts, digging in the trenches and fighting their way to the top. Fighting the real competition. But not all belts are not all fighters who have belts really did it the hard way and the respectable way. I've said it time and time again, and it's truth. But anyways, so here, Eddie Hearn is saying that the promoters are the ones that make the risks. I understand it in that sense. They make the events, the location, blah blah blah. As far as the promoter side, and fighters obviously make the ultimate risk in fighting. And what do sanctioning bodies do? They just come, thank you, give me my check, and give me my fees. Eddie Hearn's right. Okay, so it continues to say that with the governing bodies, Eddie Hearn says we have to be a little bit careful because people are losing their patience. I speak to other promoters all the time, so that's Eddie Hearn talking in them. So it talks about here, that Eddie Hearn, he's thinking about, you know, um, just, continue. You can read the article, link in the description. And he really wants to, like, let go of these belts. I think, and he talking about, the article talks about this would be a big change in the sport of boxing. I personally think it would be. I think it would be, amazing. Or they just make a whole restructuring of this whole, the rankings, fighters, make more structure and order regarding, because sometimes we see, people in the rankings, fighters in the rankings that shouldn't even be in the top 10, a few of them, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying all of them, of course not. I'm not saying that all the rankings are messed up, and but sometimes it seems like fighters out of nowhere become, get up to the rankings, one day after the next without really accomplishing much, you see? So please read that article, man. So Eddie Hearn, he's talking here about abandoning. I just don't think he would do that. But he is mentioning and he's saying how people they're getting impatient. People are getting impatient. The boxing community too. I've said it time and time again. We're getting impatient with all this stuff. Too much politics, too much politics and maneuvering with these sanctioning bodies. And the belts have a lot to do with it. You know, um, and I think that there's reiterating what I was saying a moment ago. I think that there should definitely be a restructuring of the whole, sanctioning body system. Real authority overseeing, these sanctioning bodies, or overseeing the sport of boxing generally speaking. You know, I think it would be quite chaotic. Sometimes before something becomes better, it has to go through changes, and changes aren't easy. This is speaking on life in general in all aspects. Sometimes when you want to make a big change in life, it's not easy at first. Sometimes it's not easy in organizations and professional aspects or what have you. It's hard sometimes. And if this were to happen, I think that, that would be amazing, and Eddie Hearn, he's speaking truth, and I definitely agree with him on this. You know what I mean? Imagine if there were, if promoters came together, if fighters came together, it would be so hard to do all that. It would be an incremental change, and it can be that the sport of boxing is in for a big change. Let's hope. And whole restructuring, and just imagine one of the reasons why it would be difficult, which is what I was saying a moment ago. And let me elaborate a little bit more. That you think that the sanctioning bodies would accept that? You think that the sanctioning bodies would accept such a dramatic change? I don't know, man, because when greed's in the mix and when the money's in the mix, and we're talking about millions and millions, multi-million dollar organizations, you think they're gonna let go that easy? It would be crazy. It would be crazy, and God forbid, man, but there will probably even be bloodshed. I mean, it is what it is. Why do I say this? Because, when sometimes it reminds me of like mafia stuff, it's not far fetched. Historically speaking, the mafia, was involved in the sport of boxing, historically, the mob or what have you, so it's not far fetched, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I mean? Yeah, it may sound like I'm speaking crazy or something, but if there were to be changes like this, God forbid something horrible would happen, in the background. You know what I mean? Blackmailing and things of that nature. Like I said, where there's multi-million dollar businesses and organizations and people in power and authority, which we see in the sanctioning bodies, a lot of things can happen if there were promoters really got together, and if fighters really got together and said, you know what, we're not going to do it with these belts anymore. We're not going to, that's why I kind of see it would be hard to do that. Maybe it would be an incremental change, you know what I mean? Maybe it would be sanctioning bodies cooperating more. You see what I mean? Maybe in that sense there would be change, but it wouldn't be altogether like what Eddie Hearn's trying to think, what he's saying, like a revolution. And if I'm not mistaken, the article set uses that term, it would be too much, and that's where I think it wouldn't happen. I don't think you just imagine. You think that Eddie Hearn would tell Anthony Joshua, "Hey, throw away these belts. We're not going to work with these belts anymore." You think that the sanction bodies would take that easily? You think they would take that lightly? They would probably freeze out Anthony Joshua. The sanction bodies would work together, possibly, and do some way crazy things so that they can stay in power, so that they can stay, calling the shots as far as the rankings and things of that nature. So it would be too big of a thing, but maybe it would be incremental on the other hand if sanctioning bodies cooperated more. If sanctioning bodies, started listening more and, doing things the right way in certain areas where it's crooked. I'm not saying that everything is all messed up. No, I mean, there's some legitimacy in, some of the rankings and stuff like that. I understand, some fighters, deserve to be in certain rankings they're at, but sometimes there's just a lot of fishy stuff going on in the background. So what do you guys think about this? Go ahead and comment below. Renee Box Young, thank you so much. And one of the few instances, or one of the few times that I really agree with, Eddie Hearn, or with the promoters in general in the politics of the sport of boxing, So I really do agree with Eddie Hearn on this. Check out the article in the description and, go through it, research it, read it. Interesting stuff that Eddie Hearn is saying, you know what I mean? And I hope there is change. I really do hope there is change. Boxing community's fed up. A lot of the boxing community, real boxing fans I'm talking about, are fed up with all these belts, man. We're fed up. I've been saying it time and time again on my channel, and I reiterate, this is exactly why I don't mention belts on my channel. I just think it's just, it's too confusing and it's way too much. I mean, I recognize who's on the top. I recognize, as a fan, who's really out there fighting to prove to be great. And that's what I focus on. When it comes to all these belts and confusion, sometimes I do talk about it, obviously, because we've got to be in the know. But it's just way crazy. So, what do you think? Go ahead and comment in the comment section. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much, man, for tuning in. And stay safe out there, family. Renee Box Young. Peace out.